lovely to see you all today. In 1933, a young man growing up in Plano visited his public library and, quote, scratched around in the books. He used to carry them home by the armloads on any subject I wanted, something that would turn me into a human being of some kind, free to work for my own self and free to work for everybody. One day at the library, he discovered a book that moved him so much that it helped him articulate a philosophy of life that would later be reflected in his song lyrics. You may know who it is. This young man was folk legend Woody Guthrie. Around the same time period at the Lorraine Public Library in Ohio, a young girl spent long, long hours reading. More than 50 years later, the library dedicated the Toni Morrison Reading Room in her honor. At the ceremony, she said, "I wanted there to be one place where you could come in and sit down on comfortable chairs in a quiet room and just spend an hour or two with a book." And at the Auburn branch of the Atlanta Public Library, about the same time, a young man discovered books by Indian activist Mahatma Gandhi, and that formed the basis of his lifelong commitment to nonviolent activism. Of course, this man was Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And lastly, in Pasadena, California in the 1980s, a young girl visited the public library with her father at least once a week. She would join her classroom in walking down the hill to the local branch, and when she was old enough to drive herself, she would spend time at the Central Library. She devoured all the books she could find. She watched movies at the library, she attended programs, and that's where she discovered her love of information and stories, imagination, and learning. Anyone recognize this young girl? Of course, that's me. In the May issue of Rotarian magazine, I'm sure you all read it, there was an article about our lack of ability as a society to change our minds about things. How especially in this day and age, we have all dug in our heels and refuse to listen to anything that doesn't support what we already believe. This attitude negatively impacts the public library because many people, including some people in this room, I'm sure, believe that the public library is a dying institution, that because of the internet, we are no longer needed. Here's the thing. The public library has never just been about books. The American Public Library has been around for over 200 years, and for all of that time, we have been public gathering places. Books come and go, computers come and go, but the public library will always be a place for people to come together and figure out what their community means to them. In fact, the Braddock Public Library in Pennsylvania at one time had 2 bowling alleys, 8 billiard tables, a gymnasium and swimming pool, 21 bathtubs and 12 showers, a game room for checkers and chess, and an auditorium that seated 1,000 people. This, incidentally, was in 1889 in this building. The public library always was, and always continues to be, a place for the community to get together. Honestly, one of the only ones left, in fact. The Pew Research Institute, which is a nonpartisan think tank, spent about a decade asking people around the country how they think about and use libraries. And here's the thing. People highly value the public library, even when they themselves do not use it. In fact, 95% of Americans aged 16 and older agree that the materials and resources available at public libraries play an important role in giving everyone a chance to succeed. 95% of Americans say that public libraries are important because they promote literacy and a love of reading. 94% of Americans say that having a public library improves the quality of life in a community. And 8 in 10 Americans say that the public library helps them find information that is trustworthy and reliable, an extremely important thing these days. And the generation using libraries the most, well, it may not be who you think. In fact, it's millennials who are using the library more than any other generation. This may surprise you unless you read that Fort Worth Business Press article, but this may surprise you as it does many people I talk to, because most people think that it's the oldest generation that is using the library. In fact, it's flipped. 53% of millennials say they used a public library in the past year, compared to 45% of Gen X, 43% of baby boomers, and 35% of the greatest generation. Even so, I want to call your attention to what a high percentage of use we have. We are talking about a taxpayer-funded, voluntary institution. This is an incredible statistic if you think about it. Half or more of the population uses their public library, even though they don't have to. And if you take a global view of how residents interact with their municipal government, these interactions, where most of the time the interactions are required, or sometimes punitive, for example, paying a parking ticket, applying for a building permit, paying a water bill, or even being incarcerated, I would argue that there are only 2 voluntary city services in most municipalities: parks and the public library. So when over 50% of any population uses the library, it's a choice and a powerful message about what they value. So why do millennials use the library more than any other generation? Well, they're the ones having kids. They may be older than you think. The oldest millennial is in their late 30s at this point. The public library also offers a strong connection between kids and literacy, which is why I often say the public library is a little like church. We get them when they're kids, we sort of lose them when they're young adults, and then we get them back when they have kids. And in many cities, libraries offer specialized programming aimed at helping to give millennials a sense of community that they struggle to find online. As Librarian of Congress Carla Hayden said, there is a hunger in this digital age to hear authors together, to participate in programs, to just be in a place, a community space. And I can give you evidence of that in that we had 500 people last night at the Central Library to hear a jazz performance. This picture typifies this issue for me. This young man is sitting in a public library doing something on his computer that he could easily do at home. Now, maybe he doesn't have internet and he's coming in to use our wireless, perhaps, but I suspect what he's finding here is community. Even without talking to anyone else, this young man is finding comfort in being surrounded by other people. Don't underestimate the power of civic and community space. So, how are we doing here in Fort Worth? Well, in 2017, the Fort Worth Library had 1.6 million visits. To put that in context, that's more than the attendance at all Dallas Cowboys games across the country, by 300,000. We checked out 4 million items. That includes books, DVDs, music CDs, ebooks, and more. Our public access computers were used for 230,000 hours. This was to look for and apply for jobs, to print boarding passes, check email, stay in touch with family overseas, and sometimes just to watch YouTube. We offered 4,015 free public programs, and to those programs, we had 61,108 people attend. Good numbers, huh? So if it's not you, and it might not be you, then who is using the Fort Worth Library? Well, let me introduce you to Dariana Swanson. She's an 11-year-old girl who is in the 5th grade at Maud I. Logan Elementary School here in Fort Worth. She's a shy and quiet girl who visits the Cool Library every week. This library is located inside the Cavill Public Housing Complex. Library staff say that Dariana lights up at craft time. And whenever there's a special program, and she was thrilled to find out that she won the grand prize. You can see it on the right. She won the grand prize for the Dallas Mavericks Reading Challenge. This means that she read all winter long outside of school, which we know is a key component to making a lifelong reader. Juan Mugwar PG, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, relocated to Fort Worth from Galveston. He was looking for work, looking to learn more about his new city, and looking for a place to find good books that didn't cost too much. He says he was able to find all 3 at the eSkills Library, which for you long-term folks, you might remember was once called Meadowbrook. He goes to the library weekly for good books, wonderful people, and for programs and classes. And 4 months ago, with assistance from library staff, he applied for a job, and he got it. When I spoke with him, he said that the staff means so much to him that they are his best friends. It's very sweet. Mr. Sam is a daily regular at the Riverside Branch Library. He's been retired for 11 years after a career in auto auctions. He spends literally every day at the Riverside Library. He is there from the minute we open until the minute we close. I asked him what he does every day, and he says he reads, he does puzzles, and he uses the internet. And when I asked him what the library means to him, he says his daily visits give him something to do and somewhere to go. The Hollenstein Career and Technology Center is part of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, and it's a technical education program that is dedicated to preparing young people to succeed in high-demand occupations. And the students in this program design and construct rockets that they take to a statewide competition. These students have limited funds for their supplies, and it's usually very expensive, as you know, to manufacture a custom design. So we partnered with the school district, and we brought students to the Panther Lab, which is a makerspace at the Northwest Branch, so that they could 3D print parts for their design. 2 of the students that you see here went on to compete and win the U.S. Championship at the 20th Annual Space Settlement Design Competition at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. For another example of the work we do in our maker labs, you should have received one of these. This is a 3D printed molly for you to take. It pops right off. We also have extras if you'd like. This is all library staff right here. They have extras for you. All you have to do is go up to them and they'll give you as many as you'd like, within reason. So what is the American Public Library? As you can see, we are not easily defined. We're about literacy, civic space, entrepreneurship, and community vitality. We're hard to pin down, and oftentimes our value is felt by people years after they use our resources. I can't tell you how many people I've had come up to me and say, the library changed my life. And they're not talking about my library, they're talking about the library where they grew up. Do not underestimate the power of imagination and self-directed learning. As one author said, I was made for the library, not the classroom. The classroom was a jail of other people's interests. The library was open, unending, and free. So what does all of this mean for the future of the Fort Worth Library? Well, thanks to the past 2 bonds, we're in the process of building 3 new libraries. This summer, we're launching a wireless hotspot checkout program at 4 libraries. Those are those things you maybe take on vacation, but we're going to put them in branches that have low broadband penetration in their neighborhoods. That means people don't have internet at home. And it also means that in those households, people rely on cell phone data to get anything done on the internet, which is often limited and expensive. Imagine kids doing homework on a cell phone or someone applying for a job on a cell phone, and that's what you have. So we're going to check out wireless hotspots to families in these neighborhoods. We just kicked off our strategic plan so that we can ask the community what they want from their library, including all of you. Some things I know we're going to hear: we need longer hours, more locations, and more programs and services for adults and seniors. As always, we're offering our Summer Worth Reading program that supports kids reading all summer long. Most of you know that kids lose years of reading progress when they don't read during the summer. Our summer reading program helps combat that summer slide. And we're an integral partner in the Read Fort Worth initiative, because without the public library, it will be much, much harder to get 100% of 3rd graders reading on grade level by 2025. So you're probably thinking, what can I do to support the Fort Worth Library? And you probably expect my response to be, get a library card and use the library. Sure, great, I would love for you to use the library, but only if we offer things that interest you, that engage you, and that you want to take advantage of. But there's a lot of studies that show that public library usage doesn't always correlate to support. So your support is more important to me than your usage, although I would love to have both. So here are the ways that you can support the Fort Worth Library. You can be vocal about how important the public library is to the health of our community. People take us for granted. You see this when a library is threatened with closure. That's when people come out. We need support long before then. So talk about us, talk about our value, and it's incredible how far that will go to support us. Partner with us. We have so much to offer when it comes to supporting the work of our community sister organizations. We already partner with so many of you: Tarrant County College, Visit Fort Worth, the Tarrant County Bar Association, Fort Worth ISD, Boys and Girls Club, Catholic Charities, and so many more. We can always use more partners. Help us expand our footprint if you can. We are drivers of economic development. We are. As brick and mortar retailers struggle to attract businesses in the new online shopping environment, we can help. Studies show that libraries have a halo effect on business. People come for us and they stay to shop. Help connect me with developers or builders or retailers who want to work with the Fort Worth Library and offer a space. A library's service offerings can expand and contract based on the space that we have. If you'd like an example, next time you're up at the North Park Mall, take a look at Bookmarks, a Dallas Public Library branch. That's what I would love to bring here to Fort Worth. And lastly, if you can, consider us for funding opportunities. The city provides funding for basic library services and allows us to staff, open our doors, and offer a level of programs and services. But we are lucky to have stakeholder groups that help us provide more, much more. The Friends of the Fort Worth Library, represented here today by Bunny Gardner, and the Fort Worth Public Library Foundation, represented here today by Rotarian Leslie Oliver, see the value of programs that help parents learn how to prepare their kids for school, like our program Families Reading Together, or cultural programs, like I said, that attract 500 people, like our Third Thursday Jazz. The public library represents the best of a city. As a publicly funded institution, it is our mission to serve all residents of Fort Worth, and I really mean all. We are committed to helping make a more educated, literate, and civically minded populace. As British journalist Caitlin Moran said, "A library in the middle of a community is a cross between an emergency exit, a life raft, and a festival. They are cathedrals of the mind, hospitals of the soul, theme parks of the imagination. And on a cold, rainy island, they are the only sheltered public spaces where you are not a consumer, but a citizen instead." Thank you.